Hello and welcome to Insight. I'm Natasha Jhabhaskar. Just days after Prime Minister Narendra Modi held bilateral talks with his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif in Ufa, Russia, tensions are on the rise in the India-Pakistan border with repeated ceasefire violations. India warned Pakistan of a forceful and effective response as it protested ceasefire violations along the line of control and international border, but kept the door open for talks. Today on Insight, I'm asking, is Pakistan Army sabotaging India-Pakistan talks? What sort of engagement are we looking at with Pakistan? Many believe that the Pakistani Army may be upping the ante because the crucial K word was not mentioned in the Ufa joint declaration. And joining me on the program today, very esteemed guest with me, analyst Sushil Pandit. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us in this program. Also with me, Ambassador P. Stobden, who's also presently with IDSA. Thank you very much, Ambassador Stobden, for joining us in this program. And with me, Ambassador Yogendra Kumar. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us in this program. Coming straight to you, Ambassador Kumar, first. What's really happening? What's your sense of India-Pakistan, the latest ceasefire violations and the claim by Pakistan that an Indian drone was spying and entered their airspace?
I think what is very clear from the proceedings of the last few days, that it's very clear that certain elements in Pakistan are playing the spoiler. I think on that score there can be no doubt, because the whole business of either the drone or the resurrecting the issue of the helicopter flight near the line of control, or the issue of the fact that, you know, despite this escalation firing across the international boundary and also an instance of across the line of control, the counterparts of the Indian sort of concerned officers were not taking calls. So I think it is very clear that they were wanting to avoid taking calls because of the fact that they wanted to spoil the atmosphere, which actually had built up pretty well after the Ufa dialogue between the two prime ministers. So why it's happening, I think, as you mentioned in introduction, I think I would first of all say that yes, the way the joint statement was drafted, it certainly raised certain issues in the minds of the Pakistanis, but that was to be expected. And in any case, it was not a formal joint statement. It's more a summary of what was discussed. The formulations, of course, as I said, if it's a summit declaration, is very different.
But let's not forget, there was a lot of positivity and optimism, and I remember all of us were talking about the joint declaration. What really went wrong just after 6 days of the Ufa declaration? What is really happening, and what's your sense of you know, the latest ceasefire violations?
See, first of all, let's get the big picture right. Pakistan is a hostile state. So therefore, our measure of expectations from that state have to be moderated in light of that. We fought 4 wars to defend ourselves. And in the last 3 decades, we are facing a low intensity conflict in 2 of our states, Punjab, initially, it's been sorted, and now Kashmir for the last 2 decades, 25 years in fact. Now here is a hostile state which is inimical to our interests. It is holding on to our territory illegally, and it is an anomalous state. The civilian administration, which is supposed to be the face of it, which is supposed to call the shots, which is supposed to take policy decisions, is completely emaciated. And it is the army, it is the other state, the deep state, that sometimes calls the shots, and it is not within the civilian control.
But you're referring to the power structure within Pakistan, which is rather very diffused. Who actually takes the final call? Is it the army or the civilian government? But my question to you is that what is the desperation within the Indian government? Let's not forget, you know, first you call off the foreign secretary level talks. Then second thing is that you go again with the Sark Yatra. You ask your foreign secretary to visit Pakistan. And the third thing is the Ufa declaration. What's really going wrong within our, you know, within our political circle?
Exactly, Natasha, and I was coming to that. Pakistan, to their credit, have been consistent in their inconsistencies. You know, their civilian administration has never been found to be in control, and that has been consistent right through. Their army has been calling the shots, that has been consistent right through. They have been hostile, and this hostility has expressed itself in various ways, manifested time and again. That has been consistent. It is us who have been inconsistent. On 18th of August last year, we decided to draw a line and say we shall not talk. In fact, there are a lot of people who feel that talks must continue irrespective.
Right.
I don't think there is such a strategic imperative that we must never cease talking.
And even the latest statement coming in from the Foreign Secretary that we will go for forceful retaliation, but
amazing.
open to talks.
How can you exchange fire, exchange mortar, kill each other on the border, and it's farcical to continue talks in this manner. So sometimes not talking actually communicates much better than keeping on a charade of talking. So we must understand that. Two, we need to be consistent. We need to actually put down on ground a certain non-violables, a certain non-negotiables before you begin to even start talking. And put expectations, put objectives as to what is it that you expect from these talks. Talks for the sake of talking actually communicates wrong message.
Okay.
It communicates weakness. It communicates confusion.
Okay.
And if enemy takes advantage of that confusion, advantage of that that infirmity, that weakness, then we have ourselves to blame and nobody else.
Okay, Ambassador stopped. It's not Pakistan which is inconsistent, it's us who are very inconsistent in the way we are approaching Pakistan. What is it that we're expecting from Pakistan, and why are we engaging Pakistan at what cost?
No, I think I will go one step ahead of, from him. I only read in the newspaper that Defense Secretary, Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary met only yesterday. Not before the UFA summit, which means that enough groundwork was not done before the joint statement, or it just happened to be there. In UFA, two Prime Minister met and something has been declared. This was on the expected line that the Pakistani army will resist.
Right.
Was it not known to us? So therefore, I think the homework was missing.
And is the Pakistani army resisting because the K word is missing from the UFA declaration?
No, but I'm not going into this. The issue is that at the political level, if there is a consensus for talks, who's trying to derail the whole process, both in Pakistan and perhaps here also. I think everyone they don't seem to be happy.
So are you suggesting implicitly that what's the point of talking to the civilian government when
Yes,
the army which is calling the shots?
If there is no consensus in both the countries.
When there's no consensus within the political circles?
The debate that I saw in India is that people are not happy with the joint agreement.
Okay, people are not happy
why
with the joint
suddenly these agreements happen?
Okay, Ambassador Kumar.
I have a different take on that, if I may say that. I think in the real world of politics, and particularly international relations, you cannot find yourself to shut yourself up into a kind of what should I say, a small room and not engage. I think the fact of the matter is that we have to keep our channels open with Pakistan. It's a neighboring country, it's a large country, it has nuclear weapons. We have a lot of people-to-people contacts with with Pakistan, and the fact is that there are no natural borders. So you have to actually. It's our interest.
Kumar, doesn't it sound more like a cliche? Open the channels of communication, keep the dialogue open, no confrontation. But how far it can go? At what cost?
Why do we have an embassy there? Why do we allow them to open an embassy here? Let's put it like
that.
What's
at stake for us? What's at stake for us?
What's at stake for us is that we have to take all the steps that we can with the involvement of whoever the international players are who can influence Pakistan thinking to the extent they can to keep the situation stable in South Asia.
And is there anyone influencing us as well?
I think so. I would say that. I think, let's say, when the Prime Minister takes a decision to open dialogue, after all, let's not forget that it's the Prime Minister who took the initiative to invite Nawaz Sharif for a talk in UFA. And if you would notice that before that, the two foreign secretaries were in touch with each other, that perhaps this is a place where we can open a dialogue. So I think we also would be getting advice. If you remember when the talks at the foreign secretary level cancelled last year, the US State Department issued a statement of regret at that.
I have a simple question. In terms of when we say that we are calling off the talks or we are going ahead with dialogue with Pakistan, what have we really achieved by calling off the talks or by going forward with the dialogue? Because in terms of let's look at the deliverables. When we are saying that be it the terror attack, the Mumbai terror attack, when we ask for Lakwi voice sample, we don't get it. So overall, the reactions coming in from Pakistan, and still we say that we are ready for talks.
Well, I think I think here again we have to look at it like this, as I see. First of all, Pakistan is a fractured state. We all talk that Pakistan is a fragile state. It's a state of various stages of collapse. Now the point is, if it's a fractured state, you will never have a consistent delivery of commitment from their part. But that doesn't mean we should not try. After all, we should not forget the fact that the back-channel dialogue that we had with Pakistan, Mr. Lamba from the Indian side and from the Pakistan side, their national security advisor at that stage, they have actually prepared a roadmap on the Kashmir issue. And that has actually led to a certain, let's put it like that, Pakistan-India relations are highly accident-prone, nobody can deny that. The fact that there are people to sabotage these processes, nobody can deny that. But to the extent that we can develop some of these, let's say, understandings, they may be episodic, you develop them and some say they kick in. And here I want to come to UFA. Now, UFA, the significant thing is that we are not resuming dialogue. Nowhere does it say we're resuming dialogue. What we are saying is that the NSAs will meet and discuss all issues concerning terrorism.
Also talking about the DGMO's meeting, but the question is that you have a Prime Minister who said that he committed that he will be attending the SAARC summit next year in Pakistan. How far that will happen? These sort of commitments, the sort of exchanging pleasantries. What does it really mean? Just just after that, what you see is ceasefire violation. I'll take your opinion on this. You have Sartar Aziz who issues a clarification saying that Kashmir is still a priority for us. The sort of pressure he faced. Are the two Sharifs on board? The military chief of Pakistan and also the Prime Minister within Pakistan.
Natasha, we must remember a couple of things, and I thank Ambassador Thompson for pointing out that the inconsistencies in our response to Pakistan sometimes very worryingly underscore a deinstitutionalization of our diplomacy vis-a-vis our neighbor. Sharm el-Sheikh, Thimphu Declaration, 18th of August calling off of talks, 23rd of February Prime Minister suddenly calling up Nawaz Sharif for cricket World Cup.
Right.
It seems that there is not enough homework, and in the absence of that homework, whims come into play, predilections come into play, and inconsistencies show up, which are disastrous for a delicate relationship that we are trying to build with an enemy state sworn to our destruction. Okay, that's number one. Number two, look at what has happened. This is not the first time Sartaj Aziz called a press conference and literally humiliated us. 23rd of February, after 18th of August calling off of talks, when Prime Minister Modi calls up Nawaz Sharif on his own, on 25th of February he calls a press conference and he says, India called off the talks, the onus is on them to resume whenever they want to, we are not going to try for it. That was number one. Number two, he says that Kashmir will always top the agenda whenever the talks begin. And number three, he says that they called off the talks on the issue of us meeting Hurriyat. We have not given any assurances to India on our future contacts with Hurriyat. So this be known that Pakistan has not given any concession. This is how you respond to a goodwill gesture from a Prime Minister of the neighboring country. Again here, it is Sartaj Aziz who is belligerent and undoing everything that was sought to be achieved at UFA, though I believe that UFA was a chimera.
And even now when we have seen the way NSA was trying to reach Sartar Aziz, also the Foreign Secretary trying to, this is all over in the newspaper reports today, and the sort of calls which were made, and what really happened in last 24 hours, what does this suggest? The sort of response
Natasha, I want to respond
from Pakistan.
with all humility, respond to Ambassador Kumar's take. A different take. He said we cannot box ourselves into a small room and not talk. Actually, the shoe is on the other foot. We cannot box ourselves into a room and carry the burden of talking irrespective. That is what is being leveraged as our weakness, and we are blackmailed on that because we tell ourselves we have a nuclear neighbor. We tell ourselves that the state can go anywhere and haywire, and therefore we ought to be
But are we
always
also
on our
sending
guard.
a strong message
Can
to the
you
global
believe?
world, to the world outside, that listen, we are ready to talk, but it's the Pakistan which is not cooperating, Ambassador stopped it? Are we sending?
It's not just us, even Pakistan tried to do that. I think this is a fallout of an ill-conceived international initiative. don't forget that this has happened in Ufa, not in Washington.
Right.
So there is an international angle to this. The whole discussion took place against the backdrop of this,
Right.
you know, the whatever regional
Shanghai
or,
Cooperation
Shanghai and
Organization.
BRICS and all that thing happened. And President Putin called up both the Prime Minister to come to Ufa.
Right.
Though both the countries are not yet member of
Right.
the SCO, still they went. Surely there must have been a pressure from the Russian side, if not the Chinese
Right, but
side.
the fact that Pakistan was
Yes.
asking for a membership of SCO and
Yes,
it
yes.
could have got SCO's membership only
Yes.
when India was
but
given
the problem is
membership.
that Mr. Putin did not know the ground situation.
Right.
So I think it was not assessed properly. Whosoever trying to intervene or trying to bring some kind
Okay,
of a
I'll also talk about, what are India's options. I'll come back to you, Ambassador Kumar. It's now time for me to take a short break. Next when we come back, we'll discuss more on this issue. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Inside. In today's edition, we're talking about ceasefire violations on India-Pakistan border. And joining us now is also Senior Fellow at Vivekananda International Foundation, Sushant Sareen. Thank you very much, Mr. Sareen, for joining us in this program. Coming back to the issue of India-Pakistan ceasefire violations, what is your sense? What's really happening on the border?
The normal, it was to be expected.
And right after Ufa declaration?
Well, it started actually before Ufa. It started a couple of days before Ufa. So I think some kind of signaling was taking place even then.
Then why did Ufa happen at all?
I think Ufa happened for very other reasons, and it was, I don't think there's any starry-eyed notions anywhere on what Ufa is going to lead to. Frankly speaking, if you look at just the text of what was signed at Ufa, I think the text really goes very much in India's favor, in a sense that whatever we wanted, howsoever we were trying to restructure, whatever the dialogue was going to be.
Does that become the problem? Because Sartar Aziz is offering a clarification that Kashmir is still very much high on agenda.
No, I think in a sense both walked away with something, but I think Indians walked away with much more, because number one, I think we had kind of realized the fruitlessness of the composite dialogue process, and we wanted to change the structure of that. Number two, we wanted to give terrorism a salience, and that has got salience. Number three, I think peace and security was on the agenda, and that because of, although it's old wine in a new bottle, but the meetings between the BSF and Rangers and between the two DGMOs, is some kind of a measure to ensure stability along the border. So to the extent of the text, I think one can say that kudos to the Indian side. The problem is with the context.
Right.
And the context is that we, number one, by the very fact that we reached out to the Pakistanis, we have tended to convince them that, they are actually flying very high, and you can never underestimate the Pakistani capacity for delusion.
Right.
And we only encourage them further in that delusion, which is not always a bad thing, because then they tend to make the most stupid mistakes, and we should wait for those. But the fact is that in the immediate, what tends to happen is that it encourages them and it emboldens them, that the kind of bloody-mindedness they are showing, they're justified in it, and the rest of the world will go along with them.
Right.
So I think by reaching out, that was the first mistake we made. There were a couple of other mistakes as well which we made, both because to expect that something new will happen this time when nothing new is happening on the ground.
Right, but why we are so inconsistent in our approach? Why is it that, just after
that's
calling...
a million-dollar question,
Right,
isn't
just after
it?
calling off the Foreign Secretary level talks, we send our, Foreign Secretary for the Sark Yatra and asking him to visit Pakistan. The second thing is that, the Ufa declaration, without achieving anything on ground, without things really changing at all.
Yeah, so just as the Pakistani capacity for delusion is not to be underestimated, I think the Indian capacity for optimism is also not to be underestimated.
Right.
And we tend to make these mistakes all the time. So the
And we don't consider them as mistakes.
You see, frankly, I don't think you should lay down any red line if you don't intend to stick to those red lines.
Right.
If you lay down a red line, then you must stick to it. Then whether it takes 6 months, and now, if foreign policy is going to change every 3 months or 6 months, with every season or every monsoon which comes, you change your foreign policy, I think you send very wrong signals that here are these guys that you mount enough pressure on them, and they'll turn around and come back.
But why is it that we keep on compromising on these red lines? Is this, are we facing some sort of international pressure, or the internal security situation within our country, and we know nothing can move in this direction as long as we don't really befriend Pakistan? Or is it too much about the neighborhood policy of the Prime Minister.
You see, the problem is, no, I think the Prime Minister, in a sense, was realistic enough when he started looking towards the east, and I think he conveyed that message in the SAARC summit last year, that if the Pakistanis are not willing to play ball, he'll play with the rest of the ones who are willing to, and which is why this BBIN kind of a thing is started to come about. I hope it, goes to the next level. So I don't think there is, at least I hope that he doesn't have starry-eyed notions like some of his predecessors, that he's the guy who's going to, catch this bull by the horn.
Right.
Because, that's been the bane of Indian foreign policy, that every Prime Minister thinks he's the visionary, and then they all, come back to that same point where the last ones faltered. So, but yes, there would be some amount of international pressure. It wouldn't be pressure, but it would be a bit of a nudge and a wink and say that, okay, fine, why don't you guys just cool this thing down? I think to that extent, what we need to convince the rest of the world is that we are more than willing to keep the temperatures low.
Right.
But, in the face of provocation, I think, you need to put pressure on the other side, number one. Number two, I think it's also important to convince the international community that, you can't reward rank bad behavior on part of the Pakistanis. And I think that is to some extent been a bit of a failure.
And are you talking about the aid being provided to
I'm
Pakistan?
talking about the aid and a whole lot of other engagement processes which go on.
The economic corridor, the latest, the 45.
Finally, I want to say one thing. I think the problem really with UFA has been that it's the same old template. Just in the break we were just discussing that ghoom fir ke you go back to this thing that, okay, nothing else, let's talk.
Right.
So if there is nothing else, develop your other options, number one. Number two, the expectation from this government was that that old template, that old tired, failed template will finally change. I'm afraid UFA says it hasn't changed so far.
Continuity is the basic tenet of India's foreign policy, and this is what we are witnessing even in the way we are going ahead with our Pakistan policy, if we have one. And is it high time that we realize that Pakistan has to be handled differently? Rhetoric cannot really go very far.
I think our fallacy in this is that we look at dialogue or let us say response in a kind of a as a bipolarity. It's not like that. I mean, there is no reason. Nobody is saying that just because you keep your channels open, you should not make a robust response. Quite frankly, I think even the BJP has fallen victim to this kind of template that Mr. Sareen referred to. There's no reason. I mean, why should we wait for so long, considering that even the earlier episode when it happened, our security forces were given the instructions that if there is a violation of ceasefire on their part, we make a robust response.
Right.
Why do we have to wait for this rigmarole? In fact, I agree with what Mr. Sareen said, that for the National Security Advisor to be reaching out to the Pakistan High Commissioner and to our High Commissioner in Islamabad, I think it's better to let the normal channels, the normal protocols kick in, let them work, and let the message be conveyed through them. Because if you do this kind of a thing, he's much senior, let's say in status and rank, that for him to be reaching out suggests that as if some kind of desperation on our part. So what my position basically is this. Given the fact, and we have to go to the entire history of India-Pakistan relations, you take Simla, you take the fact that when Mr. Vajpayee went to Islamabad, there was a declaration when Musharraf actually committed himself not to allow the territory of Pakistan under his control to be used for any terrorist activity against India. And the point I'm trying to make is that given the fractious nature, the fractured nature of Pakistani political system, it's a fallacy.
Right.
And it's a dangerous fallacy on our part to think that we can strike a grand bargain with them.
That
we have a total
It is a fallacy
picture,
to think that we can have a grand bargain with Pakistan. But how do you really engage with Pakistan, Ambassador Stobden? What are India's options now? At this stage, when you keep coming out with the same sort of declarations, the content is very much the same. How do you move forward?
Firstly, I don't believe that Pakistan is a foreign policy issue. Pakistan seems to be more of an India's internal policy issue.
Absolutely.
And left to Foreign Secretary, he will talk about regional cooperation, he will talk about TAPI gas pipeline via Pakistan, he will talk about fighting terrorism together, all these nice things he will talk about. But now the pressure is coming from somewhere else. I don't think it's Foreign Secretary who is actually making the Pakistan policy. There may be some other dynamics which is operating within our country. Who controls BSF? It's not Foreign Secretary. Army has a different role. I'm sure there are many other actors within India who may not go along with what South Bloc may be doing. Surely, I'm not saying that we are comparable to Pakistan.
Right.
But to say that there is a Pakistani army, there is a civilian government, I don't believe that there is such a thing. It has become a very fashionable thing in India to say, oh, there are different centers of power in Pakistan. I don't believe. Ultimately, Pakistanis are just one. They also respect their army as much as we respect our own army. So to say that they are different things, I'm not willing to buy. They're all Pakistanis.
Okay. Mr. Pant, would you like to respond on that and the fact that what are India's options now and with whom do you engage?
Yeah, I would agree with Ambassador Thope then that Pakistan is more of a domestic policy issue. It's the political will issue than the nuances in foreign policy. The big picture as far as Pakistan-India relationship is concerned is that we are in a state of impasse. Over the last 20-25 years, there is, at least Pakistanis feel, that they have achieved some kind of a parity with us.
Right.
In the sense that they can engage with us as an equal and there are no options left with us vis-a-vis them. And therefore, they can run circles around us, they can force us, bend our will, do things at will, irrespective of their economy, irrespective of their numerical inferiority, irrespective of their technology or whatever. I think those basic coordinates between India and Pakistan relationship have to change in order to break this impasse. There has to be a very clear demonstration from Indian side that, listen, we call the shots. Unless that happens, it happened a few times. During Rajiv Gandhi's time, when Ziaul Haq had to rush to India for cricket diplomacy, because he got a whiff of certain, preparations by the then Defense Minister of State for Defense and the Army Chief. They were getting into some exercises in Rajasthan. There are times when Pakistan has demonstrated and communicated that it is willing to here. I think somewhere we need to alter this impasse, and that can be done only from a position of strength. We can't get clever by half in order to change this impasse.
Okay, and you keep drawing these red lines and you keep on compromising on these red lines, and how long can you do that? Mr. Sareen, the Foreign Secretary latest has said that we remain committed to peace, but there will be forceful response to any provocation, but also, door for talks still open. So that technically means that Prime Minister will go for the SAARC summit whenever that happens in Pakistan next year, and also the UFA declaration will be implemented. We also know Pakistan denied the voice samples, Lakhvi's voice samples to us earlier this week. Where is this all headed? What are India's options when we are talking about the civilian government, the role of the army, and the army was very upset because it had the Pakistan government had more to lose in the UFA declaration. Where is this all headed?
Look, number one, I would just differ with my colleagues out here. There is only one center of power in Pakistan. I don't think we should mistake any other center of power. And that is the army. They call the shots. When it is said that both the army and the civilian government are on the same page, then that page is actually selected by the army, and then the civilian government gets a peek in. That's about it. Otherwise, the civilian government, I think Mr. Nawaz Sharif is as powerful as Mr. Arvind Kejriwal is in Delhi. I don't think more than that he calls the shots as far as Pakistan is concerned. So if we want to keep up, which is why if we want to keep up this pantomime of a dialogue, I don't think heavens are going to fall. Now that you've got into it, ideally you should have avoided this, but now that you are into it, you know that you're not going to get anything out of the guy. But if this is what satisfies everybody else and keeps the monkey of international pressure off our backs, so be it. I see no reason why that's not a game we can also play with the rest of the world. Nobody really expects anything to come out of it. The second thing is that I think we need to be very clear on a couple of things. I agree that you need to speak from a position of strength, and it was not just what happened during Rajiv Gandhi's time, it is also what happened after the parliament attack. Suddenly Musharraf tried to portray himself, who was actually a jihadi general, because until he elevated himself and became a self-proclaimed president, he was a guy who was pandering to all sorts of jihadists and all sorts of other despicable characters. And he was doing it quite publicly and thinking that, you know, he is some kind of a real stud doing all of that. But when the Indians tried to flex their muscles after the parliament attack, I think, you know, the penny dropped. And that is why his speech on January 12th, where he promised that, you know, he will act against these groups, he started banning the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the rest of it. We also know how that ban turned out. So I think I agree that you need to speak from a position of strength. But now a position of strength is not just only about putting your forces on the borders. I think there are a whole lot of other things which will have to go into that demonstration of a position of strength, which includes getting your own act together as far as your economy is concerned. It includes how you tie up and what kind of you know, I wouldn't, maybe alliance is a wrong word.
And there are many commentators who also say that, you know, as far as the multilateral fora is concerned, why is it that Pakistan is still not ready to believe that, you know, there are countries who are, you know, they're doing extremely well. You know, talk about China, talk about Russia, and also, you know, our role in SAARC, our role in ASEAN, now SCO. Why is it that Pakistan is still not out of this illusion that it has to really, you know, work a great deal to improve its economy and many other aspects? And why is it not ready to cooperate? How far this can go in terms of, you know, when you're talking about India's options, and also being firm. If you can really be firm and still hold the dialogue channels open.
Natasha, that would be presuming that Pakistan is a normal state, which it is not. Pakistan is an anomalous state. It is some kind of a freak show in this world. So, taking it as what it is, I would like to carry what Sushant said a little forward. Position of strength is not necessarily when you flex your muscles. When the new government took over, Pakistan knew that there was a change, a substantive change in India. It was demonstrated in their visiting Prime Minister's behavior. For the first time, they refused audience to Hurriyat on their own. You know, they realized that we shouldn't be unnecessarily teasing this new government. We must let it settle down. Even today, there is a great deal of anticipation about this government and might or may not do certain things, though we've squandered a lot of this. I think as a powerful state in this region, we need to set few things right. Indeed, Pakistan is a nuclear state. But no nuclear state in this world ever brandishes nuclear threats the way Pakistan does. July 8th, their defense minister, no less, and I'm not talking about some stray journalist or some out-of-power politician. Their defense minister, Khwaja Asif, said that our nuclear weapons are not for a showcase. Any other country would have wound up their embassy from there. This is an existential threat. And we just do not respond.
And the latest, you know, I would want you to comment also on Ambassador Stobden on the fact that Pakistan shot down Indian drone, and the whole debate on that. When we read about the Indian drone, it's actually a Chinese-made Indian drone, DJI Phantom, which is not even used by India. And Indian forces actually use Netra IDF, which I was reading about it out of curiosity, and got to know that Searcher and Heron, which are actually advanced Israel-made other drones which are used for intelligence purposes. This particular drone is largely used for marriages, filmmaking, and events.
Exactly. This really shows how Pakistan has become like a mad dog. And we believe that Pakistan is wrong, but not the entire world is willing to believe that Pakistan is wrong. And this is where we might fall into that trap that Pakistan is trying to lay. Look, it is Indians which is making us mad. And I think to a certain extent the world has started to listen to Pakistanis. You know, they are sorting out terrors in Waziristan, they are talking to Taliban, Russia has also started talking to the
holding
Pakistan.
Peace talks for Afghanistan and
Islamabad. The image seemed to have changed in the international arena.
Ambassador Kumar, what sort of message is Pakistan trying to send? You know, even the latest of holding peace talks for Afghanistan to us and also to the international community. And what sort of pressure are we facing that we are all, you know, ready to compromise on everything and still going ahead with the talks?
Well, actually, again, I beg to differ from you. I don't think we made any compromises. If you read the UFA declaration, it's very clear what it says. It is not a promise to resume dialogue. It is to discuss specific issues of concern to us actually. And that is why the Pakistani political circles actually, criticized. And in the criticism actually, in a way, it brought out their own difference of opinion. For example, if you remember Tariq Aziz, Sartaj Aziz and Tariq Fatmi, who were both there, and Sartaj Aziz, the foreign minister, national security advisor, and Tariq Fatmi is foreign policy advisor Nawaz Sharif, and they both, Tariq Fatmi disagreed with Sartaj Aziz about the sound sample and a voice sample, and actually he said that there's so many friends of ours who are encouraging us, how can we not give the voice sample? So what I'm trying to say is that actually, what do we do actually? I mean, if you actually take a total confrontational position, you unify that.
And whether Pakistan will file another petition for the voice sample or not. Yes.
Number one. Number two, I would actually say this, that when you have dialogue, again, it doesn't mean that you are there giving them gifts. It's a hard negotiation. If you don't get anything you want from their side, don't give it to them. But that doesn't mean you shut the door on, let's say, keeping the channels open, because ultimately, as I said, in the real political world of today, there is nowhere any government, and you look at the history of India, any government would ever shut off the door for dialogue.
Are the hard negotiations really happening, or can we really go beyond the dinner diplomacy, cricket diplomacy, gift diplomacy?
I don't think we should get into cricket diplomacy. I think if the Pakistani cricket board is going bust, I see no reason why we should enrich them, by doing. And let us remember that the last time we were playing cricket matches with them in Dubai, this whole menace of match fixing and what have you started at that point of time. So I think cricket diplomacy should be shot down. The only point, while I agree with what the ambassador is saying, I think there is just one thing I'd like to add. Keep lines of communication open, heavens don't fall. But don't elevate those lines of communication to the levels to which we elevate them. So I think there's something to be said for keeping a graded approach as far as at what levels do you engage with the Pakistanis, until and unless you see some major change on the ground, which would lead you to believe that yes, things could probably move forward. Which means, and I think this is a homework we need to do, what are a set of metrics on the basis of which we will judge whether the Pakistanis are actually turning that page or not. I think that is something which we have been somewhat remiss on.
And the sort of euphoria we witness, is this also because every time India talks to Pakistan or Pakistan talks to India, we set high goals, get really, really ambitious, that something really positive will come out of it?
Look, I think the euphoria or that excitement is essentially a marketing tool. For news staff, media, it's a very nice event. Everybody plasters it. I have no problems with it. I make some money out of it. Some of us also do. So I don't have any problem with them hyping
whether this was a 10-second handshake or a 20-second handshake, which becomes a big...
but but the point is that now let's go down to the structure of what was decided at UFA. And I don't think it's going to lead anywhere. Number one, like you very rightly said about the voice samples, I don't think that's going to happen, regardless of what Tariq Fatmi said. And I think he was quite upfront about it, that we need to do it because that's what the international community expects us to do. But how they're going to, I don't think they're going to move forward on that. Which also means that if you read the text, we have just said that we are prepared to discuss all outstanding issues. Now, just as the Pakistanis could say that, we'll keep discussing the ways and means to expedite the trials, and they could do that till the cows come home. We could keep preparing to discuss this all outstanding issues till the cows come home. So I think, we have enough wriggle room on that. So the structure as of now is essentially terrorism centric. But even on that, I think the kind of baseless and malicious propaganda, I must say this, the malicious propaganda which has been carried out in Pakistan over the last year or so, alleging that India is behind acts of terrorism inside Pakistan, I think this will descend into a kind of a tutu meme rather than very productive.
The latest on drone attack, and we have seen everyone commenting on that. What sort of allegation is this? And
I think that's laughable, because I think everybody is going to laugh them out of the room on that one. I think they shot themselves in the foot.
But still we have to keep channels of
propaganda should be kept within limits rather than over the top.
Right, but still the bottom line is we have to keep channels of communications open, no matter, even if we move 2 steps forward, we can move 1 step backward. This is what I understand. It's now time for me to take a short break. Next, when we come back in our final segment, we'll also try and understand the big neighborhood policy of the Prime Minister. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Inside. In today's edition, we are focusing on ceasefire violations in India-Pakistan border. Now, final segment, let's try and understand Prime Minister Modi's neighbourhood policy as we talk about Pakistan. Coming back to you, Ambassador Stobden, we have also seen how Prime Minister Modi's big focus has been on the neighbourhood policy, the way he invited heads of state for his oath-taking ceremony and later visiting Nepal, Bangladesh and many of these neighbouring countries. But the way we have marched forward, be it our ties with Nepal, also Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, we have moved 2 steps backward when it comes to our ties with Pakistan, and that's how things have been. How do you really assess India's neighbourhood policy at this stage?
I think when the new government made the foreign policy for the neighborhood, I think this was a well calculated, policy that things will change, barring Pakistan. And this was known to the people here. And I think it is perfectly going in that direction. The idea is to isolate Pakistan in the neighborhood, and which has been proved correct. But I think we have to see the regional neighborhood in a broader
But is Pakistan
context.
really getting isolated? We are seeing new friends. In fact, China is an old friend, but the latest investment that's coming in from China, $45 billion.
I will not comment on that, but that was our belief.
Right.
And I think probably we would like to see that. Whether we achieve that or not, that's a different issue altogether. So I think Prime Minister had a very positive outlook, and I think on Pakistan also he has a positive outlook. If you look at his statements otherwise, that is why I told you there are contradictions in ourselves also. Maybe at the bigger picture we have a positive view about Pakistan on resolving many other issues, because India's own development is stuck or linked to the Pakistani relations with Pakistan, which was very clear. But if you see the other dimension, whether Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Indian Ocean, even the recent visit to the extended
Central Asian
neighborhood, China or Myanmar and other places, I think this has been a fantastic achievement. And on all levels, I think this has been a very, very exciting foreign policy.
In fact, after the completion of 1 year of the NDA government, the first achievement which was written all over was about how Prime Minister Modi has made remarkable achievements as far as his foreign policy is concerned, and as we know, his neighbourhood policy. But Pakistan is a blot in the neighbourhood policy of the government?
Yes, I think one area where this government has been spectacular in the last 1 year is, of course, the new initiatives and really the results that they have been able to demonstrate because of these new initiatives in our neighborhood. Pakistan, and especially with respect to China, is almost insulated from what India does or doesn't do. China-Pakistan relationship is a client-state relationship. In fact, a lot of authors describe Pakistan as a hired assassin of China, and it is in China's interest to safeguard and fatten it and keep that part of its leverage against India intact. So we'll have to think of other ways of doing. The only challenge I feel this government has seen as of now, without much of a solution in sight, is Maldives. Prime Minister had to call off his visit to Maldives. Maldives has humiliated us in the last 1 year on several occasions. It has gone back on its word on President Nasheed, and they continue to cock a snook. And for a country this size, with the kind of sensitivities we have in that region, I think we need to sort this out sooner than later, and cannot afford to overlook. We tend to forget Maldives in our overall neighborhood gaze.
Right, but breakthrough achievements, if we talk about Bangladesh and Nepal, specifically the land boundary agreement with Bangladesh.
In fact, regime change in Sri Lanka also was extremely propitious.
And the fact Sirisena chose to, his first formal official visit was to India.
Exactly.
Mr. Sareen, India's neighborhood policy, the big achievements for Prime Minister, but talk about the failure is Pakistan.
Yeah, because I think, in a sense, it's about time that we give up any starry-eyed notions about Pakistan. where I disagree with what Stobdan is saying is when he says that, you know, India's own development is linked to what happens with Pakistan. It's not. In fact, if you look at the record from around 1991, when we took the kind of reforms and we did the reforms which were required for our economy, and we opened ourselves to the rest of the world, you look at the trajectory of the two countries. Pakistan has gone downhill since then. We have only gone up and up. So this and the relationship has deteriorated only since 1990. It's become much worse than what it was because of what was happening in Kashmir, in Punjab, and a whole lot of other things. So I don't see that linkage. Number one. Number two. And this is a question which is purely based on numbers. What does Pakistan bring on the table? Now we, you know, partly because of our North Indian bias, we tend to look at Pakistan a lot more. But look at the kind of trade, and let's talk about both official and the smuggling trade which you do. Pakistan, the official trade is about $2.5 billion. You want to really extrapolate it and add all the informal trade, it'll go to about $5 to $6 billion as of now. Bangladesh is about $5 billion official. You add the informal trade, it goes up to anything between $12 to $15 billion. Sri Lanka also around $10 billion if you add unofficial trade. Now, how does Pakistan stack up with these two countries with which we can actually take the relationship to the next level? So number one, I don't think Pakistan really brings anything to the table by which we can say that yes, if we make up with Pakistan, things will improve. Secondly, and more importantly, you know, the Pakistanis say, okay, fine, you want to look east, you look east. We have Afghanistan with us. Afghanistan is an $18 billion economy, which also is $18 billion because the rest of the world was pumping in money. So if Pakistan wants to rest its fate on what will happen in Afghanistan, they are most welcome. In fact, we should encourage them to do it. Let them get sucked in out there.
So
we also talk about Central Asia. We also talk about Central Asia. I really haven't, I've been hearing about the promise of Central Asia for the last 25 years. I haven't seen it come true so far. I'm not very sure if it will come true in the next 25. So let's not waste our time. Let the Pakistanis go.
This is only after 1955 when we have seen the Prime Minister visiting all the 5 nations in one.
I have nothing against Central Asia, but we don't need Pakistan to go to Central Asia. We can probably go through a more circuitous route.
Ambassador Kumar, India's neighborhood policy and also Pakistan's latest holding talks with Afghan Taliban and Afghan government holding talks in Islamabad, Pakistan playing a role of a mediator, and the way we have seen China, both Beijing, Riyadh and Islamabad playing a very strong role. Are we seeing some sort of a regional peace deal here?
Regional peace deal?
Right.
As far as
Afghanistan is concerned.
Well, I think I will withhold my comment on that because we've seen so many of these false dawns in the past. And as far as the Taliban, the Afghan elements are concerned, even those who have been supported by Pakistan, they also know the reality of Pakistan. Because, I mean, they also know how, in fact, if you read Mullah Zaif's memoirs, you will know what words he has chosen to describe Musharraf and the Pakistani government, or what the treatment of Afghans by the Pakistani police and so on and so forth. So I think the reality is quite well known, and all the attempts that Pakistan made in the past to intervene and to shape the political order in Afghanistan actually have been utter failures. So we need to keep our judgment on that for the time being. Yes, of course, there is a bit of a hope. Let us see how it goes. My point basically is that when we talk about the neighborhood, South Asia, I think Pakistan is really not so much of an attraction in terms of the market or whatever, but it certainly is a challenge or a threat to regional stability. That fact we have to recognize, and its impact or the blowback from that we have taken into account when we fashion our neighborhood policy. The second point is that we need to take into account the fact that there is a perception amongst the South Asian neighbors of India that SAARC is actually paralyzed or stymied because of India-Pakistan tension. And if you'll notice, for example, when Prime Minister actually, the second day of the SAARC summit, when he shook Nawaz Sharif's hand, there was clapping in the hall. What does it tell you? It tells you that the SAARC countries actually feel that because of this tension, the SAARC actually has become a stunted organization, which means what?
And even if you look at the very coverage of SAARC.
Let me come to the point. Which means what? Which means that all these countries, despite the fact that they are natural partners geographically in civilization, whatever, they're looking at China. So if we do not play our cards well, you will find China all over us. inside us and all over us.
Okay.
So that's the lesson that we have to draw from
Okay,
this.
I'm left with last 5 minutes on the program. I'll take final comments. I'll start with you, Mr. Sareen. At this stage, when we're talking about how to tackle Pakistan, how far do you see that our strategy is right in place, and the Prime Minister tackling this challenge?
I think we've lost ground from the time this government came to power. I think we've lost ground because a certain pressure had been built up purely by the image which this government had inside Pakistan. And I think they have kind of gone back on it. And the Pakistani perception is probably or is gravitating to that these guys are no different from the guys before them. So what we could do and get away with the guys before them, we can do with these people as well. So I think that is the negative thing which has gone about. But more importantly, I think we need to be mindful of what the regional context is likely to be. We need to reach out to certain markets. For example, Central Asia. We really don't even need Iran to get into Central Asia, because if you talk to the Indian businessmen who are dealing with Central Asia, they're dealing with Central Asia through Singapore and through China, and it's far more efficient and it's far more profitable dealing through Singapore and China than it probably will be dealing through maybe Iran or going through Pakistan is a mug's game. That's not going to happen. So I think we need to be more realistic on how we view things. And most of all, I really wish when people who are making policy, I really wish they would open a map before them, before they start making policy, rather than just imagining
Okay,
things.
Mr. Pant, be realistic and don't be over-optimistic. Even the very success of the SAARC summit or the SAARC region, it's being said that, Pakistan has actually hijacked the success of SAARC. And even when we see the very coverage of SAARC summits, we have seen time and again that how India-Pakistan bilaterals actually hijack the very issue of SAARC summit. So why is it that it is still a very big problem? And the Prime Minister now tackling this challenge of Pakistan from here, as Mr. Sareen mentioned, that we have lost the ground we achieved actually in the last 1 year.
I think a lot of blame lies with us, because we hype Pakistan's role and Pakistan's stature even within SAARC to the detriment of other SAARC members. So we need to restrain ourselves and our exuberance vis-a-vis Pak very clearly. Also in the past there has been this harangue that, let's engage with Pakistan economically.
Right.
And probably that might open the political doors and strategic doors. I think there is a fallacy there. Economically also, Pakistan needs India more than India needs Pakistan, as Sushant had mentioned. And therefore, if we offer any economic leverage to Pakistan, it should not be without a suitable commensurate concession on political terms, on peace terms, on other terms that India needs from Pakistan. And there has to be only a reward for good behavior and not gratis assi-tusi diplomacy of the Lahore Club, where you said make unilateral concessions and that might get you.
Okay, be very clear on what you really want to achieve from Pakistan. Final comments from you, sir.
I'm not saying these things, but Prime Minister said in Ufa, when he talked to Nawaz Sharif, if you read yesterday's Indian Express, he said, look, Southeast Asia has changed. Even the Central Asians are changing, or Eurasia is changing. If we can't get together, our region will remain backward all the time. This is what he told Nawaz Sharif.
Right.
Now, surely there is an economic dimension. I'm not saying that Pakistan is dependent on us, or we are dependent on. That's not the point. The point is that Pakistan can make your life difficult. The economic cost of the hostilities with Pakistan is also quite heavy on us. Things become so expensive, even diplomatically, even commercially, on so many terms. I mean, routing to Central Asia through Pacific, all this can happen.
There is an economic dimension also. Final comments from Ambassador Kumar.
Well, very quickly, I think, in fact, maybe we discussed it even earlier off the camera and all that. I think our media are fixated on Pakistan. Knowing the history of India-Pakistan relations, all these things are maybe false promises. I agree with my panelists that UFA is still a minor event in the entire troubled history of India-Pakistan relations. So the media hype that goes into it at the expense of other foreign policy, national security challenge that we face, I think in a way it is backfiring on us. Number one. Number two, I think, as I said, we need to be realistic about all these issues. That's the first point. Secondly, I notice a tendency on the part of even our political parties to start grandstanding on this. Like I remember reading after the UFA talks that somebody said, anonymous sources or whatever, that K word is missing. It was a great achievement.
Quickly, yeah.
I mean, the point really is that, you know, one event does not make the, let's say, make history.
Right.
So that's basically what.
Okay, have a clear-cut strategy, but then again, how far this can go. Thank you very much, Mr. Sareen, Mr. Pandit, Ambassador Kumar, and Ambassador Stobden for joining us in this program. And that's all we have for you in this edition of Insight. Thank you very much for watching.